Welcome to Ordinary to Badass, episode number 359. In this episode, you're going to hear from Sherrilynne Starkie. Sherrilynne created a podcast called 50 over 50, and today we're going to talk about what you want to be versus what you're told to be, and then also what to do with the fear of aging. And lastly, we're going to talk about breaking free from societal expectations. This episode is so good and good. That sounded weird. This episode is so good, and Sherrilynne is just bold and adventurous, and I love it. So I think that you're really going to like this one too. If you're loving this podcast, head on over to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating and review. Every single review helps to get other badasses just like you on the show or to listen to the show. Okay, let's get to it.
Be confident, be bold, be authentic, but don't forget to take action. This is Ordinary to Badass, where our stories empower women to step into the spotlight of their own lives and pursue what they're truly passionate about. It's time to step into the arena and become more than just extraordinary. It's time to become a badass with your host, Marie Sonneman.
Welcome to Ordinary to Badass. Whether you're ordinary or badass, I am so glad you're here. Today's guest is Sherrilynne Starkie. Sherrilynne, thank you so much for being here. Excited to have you on the show.
I'm super happy to be here.
So before we go any further, I've got to ask you, do you consider yourself ordinary or badass?
Definitely a badass.
I love it when women just own it. Have you always felt like a badass?
Well, I mean, when I was a little girl, people like my parents used to tell me I was a badass. So I think I've kind of always had an idea that I certainly march to the beat of my own drummer, and I like to get my own way on things, and I have a clear understanding of what I want to do.
I love that. I think it's underestimated, like how much parents can kind of help set you up for success, or just like the things they say to you, how that can like change the trajectory of your life.
Yeah, it really is. So, I mean, but sometimes they're wrong. Like sometimes it's not a great idea to listen to all the stuff that they tell you. Like some of the stuff that my parents told me was about not embracing it, right? About managing it and dampening it and that kind of thing.
So I imagine though that can be hard sometimes, not just parents, but teachers, and just kind of we're taught to be good girls. What have you done in your life to, like, when you have that, that inner turmoil, you feel like, okay, this is what I want to do, but this is what the world is telling me to be?
yeah, so I've kind of faced that a number of times over the breadth of my career, where I remember I had this boss in England, and you know, she was saying to me, "We don't like your brash North American ways here. We are English and we have English manners." And you know, she thought that I was being culturally obtuse, but I was just being me. And so I've learned through experience that whenever I try to like not be me, it's going to backfire in the long run. You might get a short-term win over it, but in the long term, it's going to backfire on you. Something's going to happen. You're not going to be happy, or something will go wrong, or as in my case, there'll be a big explosion. I mean, my colleagues used to tease me about my famous stand-up meetings, and used to call me the hurricane. She's going to go all hurricane all over you, stuff like that. That's usually when you've been like pushing stuff down that's, not behaving in a way that's true to your nature for a long time. Nature will rule over over time and distance.
Yes. And then it's funny too, because like sometimes if you're not being who you are, you're not being true to yourself, then it like comes out in other ways, or it comes out as, I don't know, like others can sense it. And
Yeah.
if they can't like pinpoint it, they're like, something's off here.
Yeah. the last time I was in a staff position, really didn't like it. I have to have autonomy over everything to be truly happy. So I was kind of, making some trade-offs there from comfort zone stuff that I should have never done. And then once I left that job and that I got into working for myself again, people really remarked a huge change in just basically my personality. My mood was just so much better once I, released the shackles of not being me.
Yes, yes. So, Sherrilynne, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, well, I am Canadian. I am from Ottawa, Canada, but I haven't lived here I lived here my whole childhood and my young adulthood. But shortly after I finished college, I flew the coop and lived in other places. So over the term of my career, I have lived and worked in 4 different national capitals around the world. I have during all that traveling, always worked in public relations, communications, and marketing, mostly on the agency side, but not exclusively. I've owned and operated PR agencies in all these 4 national capitals. I am a grandmother, and I have 3 lovely grandchildren and 2 lovely daughters. And I'm a married person. I'm been married for 30 years. It's my 30th wedding anniversary this year. And I'm a podcaster. And I've been podcasting and focused almost 100% on digital and social media since 2005. I've been podcasting since about 2010, various different iterations. And I love podcasts, which is how I found you.
So, tell me about your work with women over 50.
So I just finished a creative project called 50 Women Over 50, in which I ran a podcast to talk to women about what it's like to be entering this phase or living in this phase of their life. And all this stemmed from coming out of the pandemic. Like many women, I was like totally focused on looking after my family, looking after my business. We got quite isolated in our lives. And I didn't really realize how much so until the morning of my 59th birthday. I woke up with like cold fear running through my veins. It's like my 50s are almost over, and I'm not even used to being 50 yet, and I'm almost going to be 60. I was really quite freaking out about it and devastated about it. And then I just was stewing on it for a few days, and then I just woke up one morning and thought, you know what? I need to talk to women my own age about what it's like and how they're coping and what their issues are. And so I decided to do this podcast where I would interview 50 women about what their lives are. I've just completed, it took a little bit over a year to do. And I spoke to 50 women from all over the world, everywhere between the age of 50 and I think the oldest one was 74. And we just talked about what it's like to be women at this time in history, at this age, at this cohort, and what our lives are like. And I learned so much from it, and I made so many friends from it. And by the time my 60th birthday rolled around, I didn't care anymore. It wasn't an issue. I just felt empowered and happy and active and not fearful anymore, and just getting on with it, just living my badass life.
Yes, I love that. And then I like how you just like tackled it for yourself. It was something that you were struggling with, and then you went and created a solution for other people who probably were struggling with the same thing.
Yeah.
What you mentioned that you learned so much. What did you learn about yourself or through the process?
Well, first of all, I think what I've learned is that there has never been a cohort of women quite like us at this stage of our lives, because we have come up in a different way than our mothers and grandmothers did, right? We are well educated, we are more affluent, we have more autonomy, we've worked in different places, we have different life experiences, we've traveled a lot more than most people did in generations before. We haven't made, although some of us have made raising of children our central focus, we just have fuller lives, so that when the children fly the coop and we're left at this stage of a life, like my mom's generation, my grandmother's generations, that was like, I can't imagine what it was like for them. They must have felt like they're at the end of their useful lives because the kids are gone. I'm done my major job now. Like, what am I going to do for the next 25 years? But women today, we're not saying that. We're like, this is me time. Kids are gone. Great. Did a good job on that. Now I'm going to do A, B, C. They're starting new careers. They're writing books. They're traveling. They're leaning into their corporate jobs, all kinds of different trajectories that women are taking. I interviewed women with so many range of experience, but of all the 50, only 2 said they were looking forward to retirement. The rest all said, no way. I'm not shutting down. I'm staying involved. I'm doing stuff. I'm going to remain relevant. And also it's me time. I'm going to do what makes me happy. Now I'm not, going to be so focused on making other people happy because this is my time. So that was the biggest, hugest theme that I took away from it. And personally, for me, it was the fear. Like I lost the fear of it. I'm just like, I don't know why I thought things would change for me now that I'm over 50. They haven't, and I don't think they're going to now. I mean, now I understand that they're not going to because I'm not going to let them. I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep doing all the social things I do. I'm going to keep being involved with my community and my family. I'm just, as long as I've got good health, I'm going to keep on keeping on. And I think that was a pretty common theme.
So, like, what was the difference from before? How were you thinking, like, oh, everything has to end, or what was the difference?
Yeah, I had quite it was just, well, fear is the best word to describe it, but also like, just kind of blue sadness, like, oh, it's all over for me now. My career, I've done everything I can do with my career. My kids are gone and they're leading their own lives, and I'm not really relevant in that context. And I'm more tied down now than when I was younger, actually, because I look after my mother and want to be here to help my children with their children and stuff. So, packing up and taking off on a 6-month backpacking tour isn't really reasonable for me. So I just kind of thought all my adventures were in the past, but I was wrong. And I've learned that.
So what would you say to the woman that is in her 50s, or maybe she's about to be in her 50s, and she's feeling a little nervous or uncomfortable about it? What would you say to her?
So I would like, first of all, relax because it ain't all over. And I would say, like, you just take some time, take a beat, and just really think about what you want to do with the next 20, 30, 35 years of your life. It's we're living longer and we're healthier and we have a lot more to give. It's not all over by a long shot. And talk to your peers, like talk to people, talk to friends about what they're doing or what their issues are, and how they're dealing with things. And if you don't really have a peer group, there's lots of groups online that I found since I started doing my podcast, over 50s women's groups on Facebook and on Reddit and stuff like that. You could find your people out there. And a great place to start is listen to my podcast, because there's 50 women there and they all have different stories. And I'm sure that you will find one amongst them that is dealing with similar things to you. I had women whose husband came home and said, that's it. I'm dumping you. I'm marrying somebody 20 years younger. I had a woman, a police officer, who was raped by a stranger, and she had such a profound change of life in her 50s because of this incident. She started a whole new not-for-profit. I've had immigrant women talking about coming to a new country and starting all over. I've had women that were trafficked by the men that were supposed to help them in life break free and go on to lead. Like, the best part of their life happened after they were 50, when they broke free. So there's some really, really empowering stories there, and a broad range of them. So I encourage you to have a listen and see if you can find someone who's dealt with issues similar to what you're thinking.
Yeah, I would love for you to talk more about this idea of breaking free, because It kind of like you talked about earlier, you had to break free and be your own badass self as opposed to societal expectations. But this can kind of be a lifetime thing. You know, you might do it one time with one thing, and then as you get older, you have to do it again or different
Yeah.
life. But what have you or the guests on your show, what have you done to break free, or how do you do that?
Well, for me, it's going into business again for like I've kind of been in and out of working for myself over my whole career. I've always been happiest when I work for myself. So a few years ago, even though I had a very senior executive position, and I was really afraid to work for myself because of the isolation. I thought, oh, do I really at this stage of my life want to go, work in my own little home office and not be connected and have like this social aspect of work? And little did I know that the whole world would be going home with me a couple of months after I did it, right? But yeah, so I was really afraid to do that. But once I made the leap and did it, I was infinitely more happy. And some of the women that I interviewed had in abusive relationships that at 50, they just thought, you know what? I ain't got time for this anymore. I'm moving out. I'm doing something new. I'm doing something different. It takes a lot of courage to do that, especially if somebody's been in a long-term relationship and, not feeling happy for a long time. To be able to make those positive changes it takes a lot of courage. I had one woman who was living in a hetero relationship with two children and that broke up with her husband, married a woman, adopted a child. All this happened after she turned 50. I mean, there's some real acts of bravery where people are just going to take on life and kind of own their badass future.
So, interviewing so many women over 50, what was like a common concern that they had?
Common concern. Well, I'll tell you what I was surprised that wasn't a common concern. Menopause. Like we barely talked about. I thought when I said I made sure that I talked to a menopause expert in my second interview because I thought I'm not talking to 50 women over 50 and not tackling that issue off the top. But that was like the only time it came up. So I was kind of surprised about that. Women don't, although when you read, what's in social media and in the media and stuff that, menopause is a huge health issue for women. And maybe it is. The women I interviewed, they're like, okay, yeah, I just kind of got on with it. Or, I had some hot flashes and some night sweats, but, you know, life went on kind of thing. So that was one thing I was surprised wasn't a big issue. I think there was two factions of the physical thing about aging, where half of them were like, I'm fighting it every inch of the way. And the other half were like, you know what, white hair, wrinkles, I'm just embracing it all. So there was kind of two different themes that went on with that. Any other issues? I think, like I've said, the biggest one is just that this whole feeling of empowerment and this is my moment. And I don't think there's been a cohort of middle-aged women stronger and more effective in, probably in many generations, that's for sure.
Yeah, and then it's like to me it's encouraging because it's like, oh man, what's the next generation gonna get? Like if we have come so far and done all this, like what's gonna happen for the next generation?
Yeah. Well, in fact, that is one of the themes that did come out. Is I tried to ask all the women relatively the same questions because I wanted to get like a constant data set across all the questions. One of the things I always ask them is, what are you most hopeful about for the future? And there were a few exceptions, but in the main, women are most hopeful about the next generations coming up. Like they really feel that the younger generations, the millennials and the X's that are coming up, the Zs that are coming up are they're actually having an impact. They're not putting up with nonsense and they're making changes to this world that are going to have a lasting impact on the world. And us Gen X's are really encouraged by what we're seeing the younger generation do. That's an important thing.
Yeah.
There were There was a very small subset that were like, "Oh, Sherrilynne, I'm just not hopeful. I'm not hopeful for the world." That was kind of maybe earlier in the process when we were closer to the pandemic times, but I think as the year went on and more interviews, the message has got more and more positive.
Okay, nice. Yeah, and then it's like it's also just seasons. There's different seasons, and sometimes it's like it feels rough or the world looks dark, and other times.
Yeah, yeah.
So something social media world, sometimes it looks like everything's all gumdrops and lollipops and like, oh, Sherry Lynn has that together, but life has been so easy for her. That's not how it's been for me. Can you share just like a little bit of the hardships that you've went through to get to where you are today?
Oh, yes, I certainly can, because this has not always been easy. So, for example, I became a mother when I was barely 20 years old. And by the time I was 23, I was dumped with two babies and not a lot going on. I lived in a one-bedroom apartment with my babies over a bar. I worked part-time in retail and was really, really struggling. And I just sat down and told myself one day that, like, Sherrilynne, you got yourself into this mess and no one's going to get you out of it, just you. So I started making some changes at that time about, what can I do for a living that's going to actually provide for my children so that they're not poor. I didn't want to raise my children to be poor. I wanted them to be raised up in a, you know, active and affluent way. And so that's when I found out about what PR was, because I didn't even know, never even heard of it until I met someone who did it. And I was like, oh yeah, I think I could do that. And so then I went to college as a young mother and had my kids in daycare, and it was a lot. But anyways, went through it, got qualified, and have always worked ever since. So I was really lucky about that. And then I mentioned to you about, living in 4 different national capitals. Well, picking up and moving to a different country is always hard. You get there, your networks are gone, things are different, subtle things are different. Like I remember when I first moved to the UK, I had to take driving lessons again because they're all on the other side of the road over there. And I couldn't figure it out. And plus, everybody there drives a stick shift, and I learned on and on. Anyways, I had to relearn how to drive. I couldn't figure out how the phone system worked. And then you have to make new friends and everything. So, that was not ideal. That first move over to the UK was pretty tough. But every move since then has had its own kind of particular challenges. Even when I moved back to Canada after living abroad for 20 years, it was probably the weirdest one and challenging in a unique way, because I had never lived here as an adult professional person. So, I mean, I had family here and cousins and stuff, but I had no friends really that I hadn't seen since high school. And so, and I was at a stage in my career where I was the boss. Like a lot of people make friends at work, but when you're the boss, it's hard to make friends at work. And so I found that to be quite a challenge. But you just keep putting one foot in front of the other and carrying on, and eventually you get settled and you make friends and you find your way in life. But yeah, so that's kind of some of the challenges that I've had.
Yeah. And I'd like for you to talk about that a little bit. Like when you're a boss, it's hard to make friends at work. I
Yeah.
think sometimes for women too, it's hard. Like if you're in a boss or a leadership role, you could be considered a bitch, or
Oh
it's
yeah.
really easy to be like a hard ass. Or how did you deal with that?
So there was a revelation. This is when I was in working in Washington, D.C., and had been in the job like 6 or 8 months. And I noticed that all my colleagues were making plans to go out after work together and stuff. And I never got invited along. And, I was saying to someone, I don't think that the team likes me. And she said, why do you say that? And I said, well, I never get invited along. She says, no, no, no. It's not that they don't like you. It's that you're old. Oh, I was only like 38 at the time. So I was like, I am. But when I thought about it, yes, of course I was old. This was quite a young workforce. They were all 1 or 2 years out of university. And of course, the lady who's 38 and has children that are teenagers seems quite old to them. But until someone pointed out to me the obvious thing, I didn't really understand it. So once I understood that I am getting older, you kind of manage your expectations. Like, I'm not going to go out bar hopping with these guys every day after work, and you start making friends in different ways. So I've always found that getting involved in charitable works when I arrive in a new community is a great way to make friends, because then you're on the same level as the people that you're working with on these, charitable boards and balls and fundraisers and things like that. So I've always tried to have one or two of those kinds of concerns going on at any one time in my life. So that's just one strategy I use. There's lots of different things that you can use. Like if you're sporty, getting involved in sports, and then just get yourself into an environment where you're on the same level as your colleagues, and not their superior. Because you're right, when you're the boss, and you cannot be the friend. You can only be the boss. And if you are the friend, it'll come back and bite you in the long run, one or the other. And what you say too about the male female thing is very, very true. I have had colleagues at work that were guys, and I really, really liked them. Like, we were good work friends, and then something happens, they changed or whatever, and I never see them again. And I would feel weird reaching out to them and saying, hey, Peter, I haven't seen you in 6 months. Let's get together for a drink, because people think something's up, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
oh, there's absolutely nothing up. So yeah, you're right. The dynamics are a bit weird.
Oh yeah. And then it's funny too, or not, I don't know that it's funny, but like I've had people as I've promoted, like they'll stop talking to me, or they'd be like, well, you're my boss now, or you're a boss now, so I don't want my friend to be a boss.
Yes,
Like
right,
you're either a friend or you're a boss. I mean, at
right.
least they were upfront enough to just say it to me, like it's nothing personal really. It's just they don't want to be friends with the boss.
Yeah, yeah. Although, there are some individuals out there that want to be friends with the boss.
True.
They want you to think that you're your friend. So those aren't real friends either.
Yeah, yeah. It's a thing to navigate, that's for sure.
Yeah. I definitely had a friend that was, this is kind of a funny story. You could cut it out if you don't want to use it, but I was working at an agency in the UK, and there was a colleague that was kind of my peer, and we were great friends at work, and we would joke all the time. And I found out that there was rumors going around about our friendship, and I was like shocked. I was like, but they know I'm married and very happily married. Like, why would they even think that something like that would be happening? But the real irony about that was that after I left that agency, I found out that they were all at it, and I didn't know it.
They were all
So
what?
that's why they were all at it with each other, and I
Oh,
didn't know it. So that's why they suspected me, because that's how they were behaving.
oh.
I was pretty shocked to, first of all, be suspected about it. And then when I moved on and I found out later about all these inter-office relationships that were going on that were happening right under my feet, and I was totally unaware of it.
Like it makes sense now why they would say that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about traveling to different countries. And
Mhm.
I don't know if that built resilience or built something in you. I know just from like traveling alone, it really has helped me to rely on myself. And I mean, you might have brought your kids with you or something, but you're still moving to a completely different country where you don't know people. What did that teach you about yourself, or did it help you build resilience and belief in yourself?
Well, remember at the top of the conversation, I said that thing about my parents were always like, you got to try to, I've always had a kind of fearlessness about that kind of stuff, and it could bite you in the butt, because you don't know enough to be afraid until you're there. And then you're like, oh, so I kind of think I have a little bit of that protection where I like jump into things. And so I'm lucky that way, but you are right. And I do a fair, not so much anymore, but in my career, I've done a fair amount of recruitment. And I'm always intrigued by the resumes where I could see that someone has lived and worked in a country different than their own. So that that's moved around, because I understand that it really does broaden the perspective, and there's a certain amount of resiliency and autonomy and self-confidence that you get from having those kinds of life experiences. But yeah, there is kind of a almost like a pioneering feeling about it, right?
Yeah.
When you're out. I remember getting lost in London, and I was at King's Cross station, and it was my first time traveling in London on my own, and I couldn't find the platform that I was supposed to be at, and the crowd's open, and there was a guy that I had met like twice in Canada on the platform, and I said to him, hey, anyways, he got me to the platform I was supposed to be on, and then he faded off into the crowd, and I never saw him again my whole life. So he's just like this angel appeared. So I feel like sometimes, good luck also helps those of us that are out there trying to do things for ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. But then it's like, I guess part of it is like stuff usually goes wrong, right? And when you're in a somewhere you're not familiar with, whether it's a foreign country or you're just traveling somewhere you're not familiar with, and then you have to rely on yourself to get out of it. I think that helps, or that has helped me anyway.
Yeah, yes. One thing I've found that no matter if I'm lost or if I like the language thing, I've traveled extensively in Southeast Asia. I have none of their language at all. Luckily, a lot of people there speak English, but they all want to practice their English. So that kind of helps. But yeah, there's been circumstances in my travels where I felt quite vulnerable and lost and worried and afraid. But when you look back at it, you always think, well, I came through. I had one bunch of guys holding me kind of captive in a Moroccan carpet store that they didn't want me to leave until I bought a carpet. And I was actually standing there. I was like, I'm pretty vulnerable here. I don't know if I can actually just walk out of here. Eventually, that's what I did. I was just like, no, I'm not buying a carpet. And I walked out. And of course, nothing happened. But I was a little bit afraid at that time that, don't know what's going to happen here.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, Sherrilynne, let's end with a tip to encourage women who are in the arena fighting for the life that they want.
Oh, a tip for women who are in the arena fighting for the life that they want. Like, take a beat, really think through, like, if you can visualize what you want, like if you could actually picture it in your mind, there's nothing that's going to stop you from making that happen, from the cognitive diffidence of what's in your mind and what your reality is. And that's really something that I've always used. So if you could picture it in your mind, so I'm a single mom living in a one-room apartment over a bar, and I'm picturing myself as having a career in publications, and there was nothing that was going to stop me from it. So I'm a real big proponent of this visualization. If you can visualize it, you're going to fulfill it. You can't not. You can't not.
And tell us about your podcast and how we can connect with you.
Oh, podcast is called 50 Women Over 50, and it's where on whatever channels that you or apps that you get your podcast from. And I'm Sherrilynne. If you just Google Sherrilynne, you're going to find me. I got a pretty big digital footprint out there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sherrilynne. You've been a total badass, and I've enjoyed hearing your story.
Thanks for having me on. I've enjoyed being here.
And with that, we'll end the show. To all the badass women out there staying in the arena, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, own it and get after it. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being patient with me showing up 12 minutes late. I'm embarrassed about that.
Nope, no worries. It's forgotten.
What happens next?
Yeah. So actually, really quickly, I'll read you a disclaimer. Make sure you're cool with me putting this out into the world. Yeah. By participating in the Ordinary to Badass interview, you agree to allow Ordinary to Badass to record, distribute, and disseminate the podcast in any manner. You also agree to allow Ordinary to Badass to retain the rights to produce media for potential future uses in speeches, books, and other public distribution. Do you agree?
I agree.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I will send you 2 emails after this to let you know when the episode airs, just to kind of keep you in the loop, and social media promos, that kind of thing. And then I think all your picture and everything, your bio is on Podmatch, so we're good to go there. Any questions?
No, but when I see your stuff, I will share it widely.
Okay, awesome. It was so great meeting you.
And you. Good luck with your show.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye now.
Now that you've listened to this episode of Ordinary to Badass, we want to hear from you. Go to our website, ordinarytobadass.com/podcast, and submit your own experience on how you took your life from ordinary to badass and get the chance to be on a future Spotlight episode of the show. That's ordinarytobadass.com/podcast. While you're waiting for the next episode of the show, wipe off the sweat, dust off the dirt, and get back in the arena.